Mr. President of the Parliament, Madam President, Mr. Prime Minister, honourable members of Parliament, ambassadors, distinguished guests, I'm very happy to be here. It's an absolute honour. And I can't thank you enough for the kindness of your welcome to me. This day, 10th of June, 25 years ago, agreement was reached for the complete and unconditional withdrawal from the territory of Kosovo of the forces of invasion. Kosovo was finally free, its people able to live again, to hope again, to believe again in a future free from oppression and injustice. Today, first and foremost, we remember those who died, who gave their lives for the liberation of this nation. We remember their courage, we remember their sacrifice, and we express our eternal gratitude to them and to their families. For me, as British Prime Minister at the time, it brings back also many memories of tense political negotiation, of immense diplomatic engagement, of the complexity and anxiety of decision-making at a time of war. But most of all, I recall the people. Meeting the Kosovo refugees in the camps near Skopje, hearing their heartbreaking stories of displacement and cruelty, of their faces, desperate for help, seeking in my face some sense of whether I would or could help. We did help, and I have never regretted it. I pay tribute this day to those who worked with me, to the leaders of Kosovo at that time, in particular to President Rugova, whose gift of Kosovo crystal remains on my mantelpiece at home, to NATO Secretary General Solana, Italian Prime Minister D'Alema and other European leaders, to General Wesley Clark, and to the British generals Guthrie and Jackson, to George Robertson, my Defence Secretary, and of course, to the vital leadership of President Bill Clinton, and to the troops, yours, British, American, and those of many nations who acted alongside us. However, none of us would have prevailed without the determination and bravery of you, the Kosovo people. Your struggle symbolized your will for a different future. That future, as we speak, is still being formed and fought for. It is for a strong, independent, and sovereign nation of Kosovo, for a Kosovo taking its rightful place at the heart of Europe in full membership of the European Union. For a Kosovo that is free, not only in a constitutional sense, but free because its people have opportunity, security, and prosperity, and its youth happy to be in Kosovo because they know home is where the hope is. The struggle for Kosovo, however, also came to symbolize something broader, connected to the conduct of foreign policy by those nations which stood side by side with the people of Kosovo. And here there are lessons, still relevant today, even if less fashionable. Action is always a tougher decision than inaction. Intervention more fraught than the absence of it. Commission involves consequences which are clear. Omission's consequences are much more open to debate. Yet inaction is also a decision, and it does indeed have consequences. That is particularly so when the consequences of inaction are in the face of obvious and manifest injustice, and when action is demanded in defense of freedom. When we allow a nation or a people to be oppressed, when the bully is permitted to bully unconstrained, and the means of prevention are in our hands, within our capability, but nonetheless we refuse to deploy them, we set a precedent. We display an attitude. And when the activity of the oppressor is in defiance of the values we say we hold dear, but we shy away from defending, we show a weakness which undermines not only the freedom of the people oppressed, but our own freedom. Had we allowed Kosovo and its people to continue to be brutalized, their rights stripped from them, their future stolen, our own future in countries like mine would have been diminished. That is why, for me, the fight for Kosovo was not only for Kosovars, but for all of us, including my own country, who believe that freedom and justice are worth standing up for and, if necessary, fighting for. And in a world which is so interdependent today, whereas we can see with the conflicts in Ukraine and Gaza, there are multiple layers of connectivity between what happens in one arena and what happens in countries far removed from the site of that arena. It is essential that we find ways of resolution which are consistent with our values and support them, not erode them. All of this requires a willingness to act and to be mindful of the consequences if we fail to act. I know Kosovo still faces many challenges. There are divisions as yet unhealed in this country, which I hope in time can be. Countries which still do not recognize Kosovo, which must be persuaded to do so. And for Kosovo's youth, many of whom were born well after the 10th of June 1999, some of them even bearing my name, I'm proud to say. For them, there is still much we need to achieve to give them the opportunities they deserve. These young people will define Kosovo's future. And here is another cause for hope. I know from many friends and acquaintances that this youth of Kosovo is a talented group. They have ambition and they have ability. The world is changing very fast. The 21st century technological revolution is upon us and will offer, along with its evident risks, vast possibilities for those able to master it. So, let us imagine for a moment this future. Imagine Kosovo a Balkan nation along with other Balkan nations inside the European Union. Imagine it internally at peace and externally universally recognized. Imagine that talented youth able within Kosovo and as part of Europe to help develop the technological innovations which will transform the world. Imagine the richness of Kosovo art and culture shared and respected in nations far from its borders. This is not an idle dream. It is not outside our reach, but fully within it. It is what we joined hands to achieve 25 years ago. Yes, it was a fight for freedom, but not simply for the state of being free, but because freedom opens the human mind and spirit. That was what was at stake in this land and on these streets a quarter of a century ago. We ended a nightmare then, but we can build a dream now. That is what we owe to those who we remember today. That is what they would want. That would be the greatest gift to those who did their duty then, that we follow their example and do our duty now. For the people, for their future, and for this beautiful nation of Kosovo. Thank you so very much.